This is the Big Deal Podcast, brought to you and powered by New Covenant Baptist Church in Albertville, Alabama. And on this podcast, we're asking the question, what's the big deal about all things Bible, theology, and culture related? I'm Justin.
And I'm Brad.
Welcome to the Big Deal. How you doing, Brad?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Yeah,
I'm glad.
Got our caffeine going this morning.
Yes.
I done drank my energy drink.
Oh,
I didn't have it right here today.
I didn't have an energy drink today. I might be a little sluggish.
Uh-oh. All right, I got a question for you, ma'am. Another icebreaker. This is a fun one. All right. If you could spend the day anywhere tomorrow, where would it be and why? You the whole day to spend anywhere.
Oh,
where would it be and why?
Golly.
It's a good one.
Yeah, I don't know. I like my house.
Anywhere in the world you would choose your house?
No.
You just haven't been at your house very much recently.
I have not.
Yeah.
I've been so busy. It would be nice. I've got so much work to do there, and that's just what I think of. Anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Somewhere out west, I think. Like, can I carry like a fly fishing rod and just find a
You can go anywhere,
nice
do anything.
river? I think I'd just fly fish somewhere remote.
Fly fish by yourself all day?
Yeah.
Like in the Rocky Mountains or something?
Somewhere like a river runs through it movie.
Oh, yeah. You want to pull some trout out?
Just catch some trout.
You want to cook it?
Yes.
Or
I'm
you
going to
want
make me a little
someone else
fire, and then they'll teleport me home.
Okay, yeah.
I think that would be really nice.
This is like a
wouldn't it?
magical question, you know? Yeah. Anything can happen.
If I have to be by myself, that's what I want to do.
The point is for all of our dear listeners to learn something about you.
Oh.
And what they've learned today is that you like to fly
boring?
fish and be alone.
I've never fly fished in 15 years. It just seems like a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
I've never fly fished for trout in my life. Only like bass and brim.
Okay.
But like, it seemed like a fun thing to do. But if it was hunting season, it would definitely be like bow hunting somewhere in Colorado for an elk. That's like my dream hunt.
Oh, really?
I would love that.
Golly, that sounds so boring.
What? What would you do?
I've never been hunting in my life. I don't, because so every time anyone talks about hunting, it's just like you just sit there and wait for an animal, and that sounds super boring.
No, I mean, part of it's just like being in the woods and just being, there's nothing.
If I'm going to be in the woods, I would rather like be on the move, going to see something. Like,
why not be there? I mean, if the point is to go see something, you can be just teleported. Just go be in that spot. You don't have to walk to it.
I know. Well, I wouldn't choose that for my.
What are you going to do? What are you going?
If I could do one day tomorrow, all day, I think right now I'm feeling a beach in Greece.
What?
Yeah, I want to hang out. I want to eat a bucket of hummus.
Oh man,
pita.
You should go to Lebanon. They make the best hummus.
Yeah, and I want euros and baklava.
I feel like I've chosen poorly.
I think you did choose poorly. Yeah, and hang out on the beach with like an umbrella. Man,
but it'd be fun though to be like in the ocean on a boat fishing for like tuna.
I think I could put that as part of my day. You couldn't though. You chose to go in the middle of the woods in Colorado.
It's too late. No take back season.
No take back
season. Man, I hope I kill a monster elk though.
Yeah,
that'd be amazing.
That'd be cool.
Oh,
But then you got to tote it out.
No, you don't tote no elk out.
Yeah.
You got to quarter them out right there. They weigh like 800-900 pounds.
Well, you didn't choose like to bring like a side by side or nothing with you yet. So you.
Well, I mean, I teleported there.
Okay.
Maybe let's teleport home with my elk.
Maybe you could do that.
Yeah,
I'd allow it.
Okay. It's got to be somewhere on Earth, right? We can't teleport to like.
Well,
Brandon Sanderson's world.
No.
I want to go to the Shire again.
Shire, please. You go to New Zealand.
That's true. I could.
But if you go to, we've talked about the Shire is basically Sand Mountain.
Yes, that's true.
So North Alabama.
Which was my first response. Like, I need to do stuff at home.
Yeah.
I'm pretty boring.
You are super boring today, man. Yeah.
I need to drink I don't know. Maybe my house is really awesome. Maybe if people came to my house, like, this place is paradise.
I think your house is cool. I don't think it's as cool as the Aegean Sea, the Mediterranean Sea.
I've been there.
It's pretty cool, man.
It's pretty cool, but man, there's no place like home.
For a day? Would you be choosing one day to spend somewhere?
It's just soldier talk, man.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's like, man, Soldier dreams of home.
All right, that's true. All right. So, look, everyone, we've been going through the Bible, the narrative of the Bible, the story, and our goal here is to understand the overarching story. Arching?
Yep.
Both. The story of the Bible.
Overarching.
I think it's arching.
I think so.
But arc is also...
Yeah, but you don't say arcing.
I don't think so. Yeah, it's arching. Yeah. The overarching story of the Bible. And the goal is basically to observe the text and see, like, what's the Bible talking about? Like, what's the themes? What's important in the Bible? Like, not what we bring to the table that's important, but what does the Bible kind of front load and curate for us as important? And we want to do that in a way that is helpful for everyone to understand. You know, a lot of times, some of those thematic things are kind of like ivory tower-ish, you know, and it's a little like people don't ever get them explained. We want to explain them in, layman's terms, like, you know, everyday language kind of stuff.
Also, the Bible's so big, such a large book. It's a little bit intimidating, and it's often hard if you don't have a certain level of study or expertise to sort of see some of the ancient hyperlinks that we talk about where it's being referenced back. Like every single prophet, so if you read the Bible and you get to Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel, they all speak Torah. They all speak Pentateuch. They're always calling back to Moses. Yeah. Every prophecy, everything they do is the first 5 books of the Old Testament are foundational. Yeah. So if you don't have a narrative understanding of the first 5 books of the Bible, you'll miss a lot of the stuff they're saying. It's very repetitious, actually.
Very, yeah. All the themes are set at the beginning.
Yes.
And they're continued throughout the rest of the book. And so...
And the chapter we're getting to today is probably the most important chapter in maybe the Old Testament. Foundationally, it's a cornerstone.
We talked about that last time. It's like this. It's top 5 at least.
Yes.
You know, because what happens here in Genesis 15, it's like this hinge point for the rest of the story. The hinge point for the gospel, the understanding for the gospel, what Jesus does, who Jesus is.
Yeah.
And this is happening 2,000 years before Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, approximately. It's hard to date that exactly, but this is way back in the day with Abram. He hasn't has a name changed yet, you know.
Yeah, it's foundational for the Exodus. Why they're even coming back there.
Yeah,
what the kingdom is all about. Every single
there's
thing.
So much theology set up here in Genesis 15. So this is a big one,
and it's great because the hero of this chapter is scared to death.
Yeah,
the human hero.
Yeah, that's right.
This is not him having a moment of I'm the boss. It's a moment of this is never going to work.
Yeah, that's right. So, just to remind you, what happened last in the last section of Genesis, we began the Abraham cycle, right? This, set of stories, couple chapters. There's actually like 5 or 6 chapters just about Abraham and his journey from Ur of the Chaldeans, which is Babylon. You know,
Shinar's also Babylon.
Shinar's also Babylon, and we're going to find another name for Babylon here in this chapter again this morning. That's where Abram is from, and God has called him out of that place to be His particular people. To be the conduit of blessing. God's going to restore blessing to the earth, right? Just like He was originally He had blessed Adam. Originally He had blessed Noah. And now He's going to restore that blessing through Abram and his family.
Yeah, there's already this tracing of the promised seed. So we had Eve. Her seed was going to crush the head of Satan. Yeah. Then Seth. Yeah. Because Cain and Abel, one of them died, another one was disqualified.
Yeah.
And then we went to Noah, then Shem. Yeah. And now Abram is the direct descendant of Shem.
Yep.
And he's the one through whom all the nations will be blessed.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we're tracing the seed of the woman, Eve, right? And we've landed on Abram. Why Abram and not someone else that's along the lines? Well, that's
Abram was tall. We have no idea.
We have no idea. It's just who God chose.
And he is in Babylon.
The mystery of his election, right?
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
The more you read the Bible, the more you start to automatically import concepts from later into this passage.
Yeah.
But so you think of Abraham as like a Jewish guy, or you think of him as Israel, and he's Babylonian.
He is
like
Babylonian.
It doesn't exist yet.
Yep.
And he is the father of the Hebrew nation, right?
Yep.
And he's called Abram the Hebrew.
Yeah.
But the unfolding of that concept hasn't happened yet, and won't happen for 400 years.
Yeah.
But
Hey, do you know Abraham's favorite way to make coffee?
I do not know.
He brews it.
Oh no, that's the worst. We lost 70% of our
Everyone's
listeners.
gone now.
They're all gone.
All right. So Abram is he's promised by God, that you're going to be this blessed nation. You're going to have a land. And then we have some different run-ins with the local geopolitical powers of the day.
Yeah. Babylon, Shinar's there.
Yeah, Babylon's part of that.
Chedorlaomer, don't forget him.
Gomorrah, yeah, Chedorlaomer. Is that how you say that?
That's how I say it.
That's a mess of a word.
That
right there,
sounded
man.
good though,
Yeah,
didn't it?
I
I
like
said it so fast and confidently. You thought, oh well, that must be how it's said.
That must be correct.
And I think sometimes that's how stuff happens.
Yeah.
Somebody just says it loud and confidently. I'm like, okay, it's Chedorlaomer.
That sounds right to me. You get to chapter 15. Let's read a little bit of chapter 15. This is the big hinge passage.
Well, there's one thing.
Oh, you want to say something?
Yeah. So Abram just got Lot back.
Yeah.
And so he had to go fight this coalition that he lived around, right?
Yep.
So he beat them up. He whooped those guys.
Whooped them.
Which means they don't like him much.
Yep.
Right? And so then the king of Sodom comes down and he's like, oh, give me the people, keep the stuff. He's like, I'm not taking a sandal strap from you because you'll tell everybody I made Abram rich.
Yeah.
So then he sort of insults the king. Everybody that's his neighbor, he is sort of not happy with him.
Yeah.
And he's on an island, so to speak, and he owns nothing.
Yeah.
He is a sojourner in the land. And nothing. He's an immigrant. He got nothing. And so that's the context of 15.
Yeah, so chapter 15, let's do a little reading.
Do it.
Says in verse 1, after these events, all that war stuff, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. The word of Yahweh, right, came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield. Your reward will be very great. So that's an important revelation.
Yeah.
Yep,
God speaks to him in a poem.
Yep.
It's a little bit difficult. We know that he's his shield. It can be your reward is very great, or I am your great reward.
Yeah.
It's a little ambiguous.
Yep.
But I think it's the same. The reward is out of this world, so to speak. God himself is the reward.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so Abram is afraid, and God is just confronting his fear, reminding him, even though all these things are happening, it's still on.
Yeah,
the promise is still on.
But Abram's fear is deep, and it's multi-leveled. It's not
just his stability among the local nations.
Yes,
right.
Yeah, he's 99 years old almost, 90
right.
something.
And so you get to verse 2. But Abram said, Lord God, what can you give me since I am childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus, or Eliezer?
Eliezer. Yeah, that's how I say.
Yeah. Abram continued, look, you have given me no offspring, no seed, right?
No seed.
That's the theme, seed. You've given me no seed, so a slave born in my house will be my heir.
Yep. That word offspring or seed there is the hyperlink word.
It is.
To trace all the way back to Genesis 3.
Yeah.
It keeps popping up. And it's going to pop up till Jesus.
Yep. Now the word of Yahweh came to him. This one will not be your heir. Instead, one who comes from your own body will be your heir. He took him outside and said, look at the sky and count the stars, if you are able to count them. Then he said to him, your offspring will be that numerous. So, two things about Abram's fear, I think, or actually the importance of the offspring, the importance of the seed. Two things about that. One is how important is having children in this society?
It's very important. Also, it's a promise that God made to him over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, he made him two promises. Mm-hmm. you're going to inherit this land. I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
And you're going to have a seed, and through this seed and through you, I will bless all nations.
Yeah.
And neither of these things have happened.
Yeah.
And he just had this war, basically, where he could have been killed. And they're still out there.
Yeah.
And he's like, God hasn't done anything he said he was going to do.
Yeah. So you have there's like I said, there's two aspects to this, like fear about not having offspring. No one, it's his future, his family future, and
legacy.
Also the legacy, and then it's also the promise of God is related to this. And so like if you didn't have children, like who will be the one whose name is made great?
Yeah.
Like it's just going to end with you. Like the whole point is that God would give you this nation that comes from you, and it's not happened. So you have to have the children in order for that to happen. And it can't be Eleazar of Damascus,
And I think there's two things here that's important, because Abram is our stand-in, so to speak.
Yeah.
If you are a person of faith who believes in the promises of God, then Abram stands in for you, so to speak.
Yeah.
You can read yourself in this text almost.
Yeah.
Like, how does God treat a fearful child that has received nothing of what is promised? And that can happen. That's going to happen to every single listener, maybe. And so, one thing is, the first thing God does is remind Abram of who he is, and not in a you dummy way, but like, I am your shield and your reward. And constantly through the opening of the Bible, God is giving to us names for himself. We name him actually most of the time. But when I say we, the characters, like soon we'll see Hagar. We'll say, you are the God who sees me. You are the God of healing. That's all these names come from us to God, so we can remember these things. Here he names himself, I am your shield. And you're a great reward. And so when you're having these fears, these issues, one of the things I think the Bible's teaching us to do is remember who God is.
His character.
Don't forget who God is. And then the second thing he does is he makes promises. And even here, he makes a promise. He doesn't make a new one.
It's
the same promise.
Same exact promise.
So God reminds us of who he is, and he reminds us of the promise he made. Right? So we don't need a new revelation.
No.
We need to remember what has been revealed. And trust it. And that is going to be foundational for everything else in the Bible, because verse 6 comes on the heels of these two things. He reminds Abram who he is. He reminds him of what he promised. And then verse 6 says, and he believed God, and it was counted to him as righteousness.
And that's one of the big moments right there.
That is the big moment. That's the moment that all the world should be silent and watch.
He believed Yahweh, and he credited it to him as righteousness.
Not his works. Not anything he had done.
He just believed him.
Just believed him. That's it. Because Abram's not going to be perfect after this. He screws up and gives away his wife again. And he's not being he's not being perfect here. He actually argues with God. So what's another beautiful aspect of this very human story, I think, is God comes to Abram and says, don't be afraid, I'm your shield. I'm your great reward. And he goes, what are you going to give me? Nothing you have said has happened yet. I mean, if you read between the lines, Abram's a little bit spun up, right? He's mad about it. He's like, I don't have a son. You said I would. And a guy born in my house, Eleazar of Damascus, is my heir. He's the closest thing to me. What are you talking about, great reward? And then that God takes him by the hands, like, come look at the stars. This is how your offspring's going to be. Settle down, Beavis. Man, that was an old one. You got to be an old listener to get settled down, Beavis.
It always strikes me every time I've read this passage that, like, when we tell people to believe God, trust God, like, we have a 1,600-page book of his faithfulness and his character to call upon, his character, all the things about God, and like, what did Abraham come to that with? Far less. Right? And he did not have, like, the stories of Moses and the prophets and Jesus and everything.
No.
His faith is really remarkable. And like he just believes.
He's a
God.
pioneer.
He is a pioneer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he believes
He
God.
had seen some faithfulness of God in his life.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. It does matter. What I mean, it doesn't matter to you in this moment of fear. It's so easy to forget what God's done.
That's true.
It's super easy.
Yeah.
And it's also hard at the moment to see the workings of God in your life. Like, he didn't stop to think, how did I take 318 men and beat an army of 4 kingdoms?
Yeah.
Like, what happened here?
Yeah.
Like, it is a Gideon moment where he divides the soldiers at night. Some kind of crazy thing happened, and Abram won that fight. But, when you're in the middle of pain, you don't think about those things. It's like when you're truly tired, the first thing that goes is your sense of humor.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah,
first thing that goes is sense of humor. That's how you know you're really tired and under stress, when nothing's funny anymore.
Yeah.
And then after you get better, it's all funny. But it doesn't matter at this moment. He's in pain, and God handles him very gently.
Yeah,
and beautifully.
It is beautiful. So let's talk a little bit about like faith and its relationship to righteousness, because this is a theme that's kind of throughout the rest of the Bible. Let's explain, like, what is faith and what is righteousness? Let's just give those, definitions. Put them in your own words. What would you say faith and righteousness are?
Okay.
Each individual one.
Okay, so faith is it is simply trust.
Mm-hmm.
He's put his trust in what God said. He's going to do it.
Yeah.
Childlike faith.
Yeah.
Weaker to stronger. Mm-hmm. That's going to take care of me.
Yeah.
And that is faith.
Yeah.
Righteousness is ultimately always do. It sounds so dumb, but it's just doing what's right.
It is. Yeah.
He did what's right.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing, and this is the history of the church, right? How do you declare someone to be righteous who has done unrighteous things?
Yeah, that's the big problem.
And God has declared Abram righteous.
Yep.
His righteousness is based on, attached to his childlike trust in God.
Yeah.
It is not attached to the things which he has done.
Yeah.
So that brings up a host of questions that have to be answered in the Bible. How do sinful people become reckoned as righteous? The answer, not just from Paul, but from the Old Testament, is you believe God.
Yeah.
He's going to take care of it. He's going to take care of not only you, but your righteousness also.
Yeah. There's no turning back the clock on your sin. And that's the big issue, is that sin is in the world and we've all participated. And so how does one become righteous?
Yeah.
And you get Romans 1, how, the righteous will live by faith.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to be the ones who live, who receive the resurrection.
Yeah, it's hard. Like you said, you can't turn back the clock. I often have bad thoughts of things that I did in the past and think, man, this is something that can only be fixed with a time machine.
Yeah.
Like, you can't fix it, and it weighs on you. Like, how can an unrighteous person be declared righteous? It's like in Shakespeare, Lady Macbeth, after they... Spoiler alert. After they murder their kinsman, the king, she keeps obsessively, compulsively washing her hands over and over because she can't get the blood off of them.
Yeah.
She goes mad with the guilt.
Yeah.
And so how do you undo it? And almost every religion that I know of in the world, other than Christianity, is you got to balance that scale somehow.
Yeah.
You got to do a bunch of good stuff and pile it up so that it will outweigh what's bad. But that is satisfactory to no one.
Yeah, I know. You think about, like, how many, so say you've told like a lie. Okay, you've lied to your spouse or something, instead of going to the grocery store, you went to GameStop and you bought an Xbox or something. I don't know.
Never would that happen.
Yeah, you lied to her. I don't know, whatever it is. And like, how many?
You're so devious. Instead of going to the library, I was like, "What did you do?" I went and bought an Xbox. Like, you rich.
I don't know. It's the first thing that came to mind. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So you've lied, and how many like old ladies do you have to help across the road to make it where you didn't lie?
Yeah, it won't.
You can't. That's an illogical thing.
Or,
there's
like,
no balance.
I mean, really, also, it's like, I lied. If it's something worse, you tell them to go to the library, you're really going to your neighbor's wife's house or something.
Oh, yeah. So now we're getting real bad.
I mean, how do you repair trust?
Yeah.
When should you have the expectation of trust?
Yeah.
And because that's not only going to be in your heart, but in theirs when you do sin. It's bad.
You've killed someone. All right. Real extreme. How much money do you have to give away, generosity, to make it where you didn't kill anyone?
There ain't enough money.
It's impossible.
Yeah. You kill some of my family.
Yeah.
There is no money, no ransom great enough.
No, that's right.
Even your death will not be satisfactory.
Exactly.
Because that doesn't bring back anything.
Exactly.
There actually is no justice here.
Yeah. And that is a weirdly beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing because mercy reigns.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. So the Lord credits righteousness to Abram, even though he just basically sold his wife.
Yeah.
A couple chapters before.
Does it again.
He's going to do it again. He's called a righteous person in the same way that followers of Jesus are called righteous.
Yeah.
Despite their sin, despite their ongoing
This
sin.
is what Luther was going on about in the 1500s. And, he argued it from the New Testament, but he's arguing it from the New Testament that's arguing it from Genesis 15.
That's right.
It's not anew.
Yeah.
The concept of righteousness, being declared righteous by faith.
Yeah.
Simultaneously righteous and sinner, or as Luther said, just and sinner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is a big deal.
Yeah.
And that's part of the trust.
Yeah.
Right?
Romans 3 is probably the big passage in the New Testament talk about this, that the righteousness of God. I'll go to it. Romans 3, was it 21 or something?
Keyboard clicks are just beautiful.
So now, apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been revealed, attested by the law and prophets, which is what we were just reading. The law is in Genesis, right? The righteousness of God is through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe, since there is no distinction. And they are justified, which means made righteous or declared righteous, freely by his grace through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus. So this is the New Testament version of Genesis 15.
Yeah.
Right? 6. That there's a righteousness by faith. And so God is doing the same thing. That's one of the interesting things, is that he's not doing a different thing back here in Genesis 15 that he's doing in Jesus.
No, you got to remember, this is all before the law of Moses.
Yeah, this is pre-law.
The law of Moses comes after.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Paul's riffing on, the law of Moses.
Yeah.
The stumbling block that's laid before everyone's feet, the tripping hazard, we'd say now, is the law.
Yeah.
The trick or the deception is God makes some rules.
Yeah.
And if you keep those rules, you'll be considered righteous. There's two problems with that. One is that you don't keep those rules.
Yeah.
No one does.
That's right. Yeah.
The second thing is keeping them doesn't make you righteous. So, and I use this example a lot, is that like if you go out of town and your neighbor comes over after you go out of town and he says, "Hey man, I see you left your shed unlocked, and while you were gone, I didn't steal your lawnmower." Like, I saw it sitting there with the key in it, and I didn't even steal it. And nobody looks at him and go, "What a great guy." You think this dude's a psychopath.
Yeah, that's right.
Or like, "Hey man, while you were gone, your wife was over there lonesome. I didn't even try to seduce her.
Didn't even try.
I didn't even try to commit adultery. Aren't I something?" And that's what you sound like when you brag about keeping the law.
That's right.
It's idiotic.
Yeah.
But people think that, or they'll take it to the next level and like compare themselves to other wretched sinners. Like, well, at least I don't kill nobody. At least I ain't like that guy over there.
Yeah.
And it's like, shut up, man.
Yeah,
like, you can't brag about not stealing. One time I had a friend.
You can't brag about not killing someone.
Yeah, you can't brag about not killing somebody. Yeah. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. Like, not murdering them. It's like, yeah, man, I saw this guy and like I had my knife in my pocket and I thought I could easy stab this guy, but I didn't. It's like, what? Dude, you need help.
Yeah.
But that's what somebody who boasts in the law sounds like.
That is, yeah.
The law is there to reveal unrighteousness.
Yeah.
And so...
And it's excellent at it.
It's excellent.
Yeah.
It's excellent. The fact that you want to steal somebody's stuff or that you have these intrusive thoughts of a stabby stab, you are messed up, man.
Yeah.
That's the point of the law.
That is the point.
So is the law bad? No, the law good.
Yeah.
Then that's what Paul talks about in Romans 7 and 6. It's like the law, sin through the law seized an opportunity and put me to death. So when it says, don't do this, I was like, I think I kind of want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't realize how much I coveted till I read that thing about coveting. So,
man,
before all of that, God says to Abram, "Hey, I'm your shield. I'm your reward, and I'm going to bless you, and you're going to have stars, sons and daughters that are like the stars in the sky and the sand on the sea. You won't be able to count them. And Abram said, I believe you. And he's like, you're a righteous man because you believed me. That's it. That's the expectation of God, is for you to trust him.
Yeah.
That's pretty beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's not like no take backsies, right? You don't have to sit there and think, well, what about that thing I did bad? Well, God's going to take care of that.
Oh, there's that connection in Romans 4 when he's talking about Abraham and Sarah. And so like what's the parallel in the New Testament? Okay, Abraham believes God. What is he believing? And in Romans 4 it says that he's that God can take what is dead and bring it to life. And so what he's talking about there is Sarah's womb. It's like that their life can come. She's like 90-something years old.
Yeah, he says the same thing. It might have been Paul in Hebrews 11 when he says that Abraham believed God. We're getting a little ahead, but when he has to take Isaac up to sacrifice him, everybody's like, how could he do that? Well, he thought, well, this is the son of promise, so if I have to kill him, God will bring him back.
That's right.
And he did receive him back, is what it says.
So his faith is that God is in a resurrection. It's in the God's ability to take what is dead and bring it to life. And that's why Paul in Romans 4 says, like, we have the similar faith. We're children of Abraham, spiritual children of Abraham. We have the same faith. Because what is our faith in? That Christ was brought from death to life, right?
Buried with him in the likeness of his death.
Yeah, raised
to walk in the newness of life.
We got to say that yesterday, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Romans 6.
It's Romans 6. Beautiful.
So are we in Genesis or Romans? And the answer is yes.
Yes,
that's
right.
what I was talking about earlier.
Romans
sits on Genesis 15.
It's the New Testament commentary on Genesis.
100%.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah. And it can't be understated or overstated, whatever. Yeah. If you don't, everything Paul is talking about is here in Genesis 15.
Yep, that's right. So this is a huge part of what it means to the theology behind when we talk about faith and repentance and following Jesus. This is like the backdrop. This is the theological backdrop right here, is that you can be declared righteous by God. God will declare you righteous if you are faithful, if you have faith in him. So I think that's clear. Let's move on on that. So he also said to him, the Lord also said to him, I am the Lord Yahweh, right, who brought you from Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to possess. But Abram said, Lord God, Yahweh God, how can I know that I will possess it?
Still a little mouthy.
How can I know?
Yeah.
Like, give me some proof. Give me some evidence. Give me something. You haven't
given me a son. You haven't given me the land. Yeah. How am I going to know?
Yeah, how am I going to know? I don't talk to God this way. Yeah. Most people don't. It might not be appropriate.
Well, that's because you're probably a passive-aggressive disciple. You just have it in your heart. You just don't say it to his face. It's like, what just happened to me? Oh, hey, Lord, how you doing? I just want to bless me and my church today and my wife. You jerk. You did these things to me. It's in there.
It's in there.
He can take it.
Yeah, he can. That's the point I want to get.
The prophets, man... but you may not just have been pressed enough that you're throwing stuff up in the sky trying to hit him.
Yeah, I don't know.
What are you doing? But like Jonah mad at him. Abram mad at Elijah.
Yeah.
Like all the prophets are dead and only I'm left. And God's like, come on, man.
The Lord can handle our lament.
Yes.
He can handle our our frustration.
I would even say from Genesis 15, I'm not even. I'd say he's sympathetic to it.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think that he is like a good father.
Yeah.
Who understands our disappointment.
Yeah.
And that we can't see all things. We don't know all things. We can't see where he's bringing us.
Yeah.
And so he's like, this is hard, actually.
Yeah.
That my daughter is going through something right here.
Yeah.
And they can't see. And all I can say to you right now is I need you to trust me.
Yeah. He doesn't, when Abraham gets mouthy with him, he doesn't like slap him down.
No.
You fool.
There's not a single person.
He's met with grace.
Yeah. There's not a single person in the Old Testament who gets mouthy with God. Yeah. He goes, I'm going to smite you.
If we're going to get to Moses here in a little while.
Yeah.
and Moses gets mouthy with God.
Yeah. Well, he did almost smote Moses once.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that too. But he almost got the smited.
Almost got the smited. Yeah. So he gets mouthy with God. How can I know? And then you get a kind of a weird little moment here. He said to him, verse 9, bring me a 3-year-old cow. Okay, what's happening here? Right?
Yeah.
A 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. So he brought all these to him, cut them in half.
Yeah, what do I look like? Farm town? Like, how do I...
He cut a 3-year-old cow in half.
Yeah, man.
That is not easy.
No, not easy. I don't know how big cows were back then. I got in a fist fight with a cow one time, and I'll tell you that they're formidable.
Yeah.
It didn't use its fists.
Cutting any big animal like that in half, I wonder if it was like straight down the middle, or it'd be easier if it was like front and back half.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
You think it's that?
Yeah, I think it's that way.
That'd
front
be
and half.
easier.
Yeah.
Way easier.
Yeah.
That's probably what it is. Yeah. Same thing with a female goat, 3-year-old female goat, 3-year-old ram. This is a lot of work.
A lot of work.
Bloody work.
Weird
stuff for us.
And it's like, how old is that cow?
It's 3 years old.
Is that one 3? Okay.
3 years old, 3 years old, 3 years old. Yeah. And he laid so he brought all these to him, cut them in half, and laid the pieces opposite each other, but he did not cut the birds in half.
Yeah, probably too little.
Yeah. Birds of prey came down on the carcasses, but Abram drove them away. Mm-hmm. As the sun was setting, a deep sleep came over Abram, and suddenly great terror and darkness descended on him.
Yeah.
Then the Lord Yahweh said to Abram, know this for certain, your offspring will be resident aliens for 400 years in a land that does not belong to them, and will be enslaved and oppressed. That's prefiguring the Egyptian, all right?
Yep, 400 years
of slavery. However, I will judge the nation they serve, and afterward they will go out with many possessions. But you will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the 4th generation they will return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. When the sun had set and it was dark, a smoking firepot and a flaming torch appeared and passed between the divided animals. On that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, I give this land to your offspring from the brook of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates River, and the land of a bunch of ites. We can talk about them.
Yeah. Kenites, Kenizzite, Cadmonite, Hittite, Perizzite. We have a lot of ancient attestation to the Hittites out of that list.
We're going to talk about them in a minute. Yeah. So kind of a while for our ears, our situation, kind of a weird thing to happen. Okay. All right. How can I know God? Well, take some animals and chop them up.
Yeah, chop them up.
Yeah. So what's going on there?
Well, there's a couple of things I want to say about it. One is how you read a text and what you do. Like if you read a commentary on verse 11, it says, the birds of prey came down upon the carcasses and Abram drove them away. If you read some of the ancient commentaries, they'll say, this is symbolic of Abram defending the promises of God from the birds of prey that would swoop down to take them. Yeah. And I don't know that that's true, but man, that makes good preaching.
It's one of those things. Yeah.
But why is that detail in there?
It is interesting.
What does it mean?
Yeah.
And so I go, I'm not sure it means that, but there's a little spark in me that goes, that might be true. I don't know. It's symbolic of his vigilance for sure. Yeah. He wasn't going to let no bird of prey swoop down, snatch his offering.
Whatever's happening with these cut up pieces is worth protecting, and this is something important that he knew the importance of too.
Yeah.
He's like, he wasn't just like following blind instructions probably. He's like, God wanted me to do this.
Yeah, and when it says he drove them away, it says he fell upon them. Yeah. And that's like Old Testament speak for like war.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
he went to war.
Yeah.
You're going to take my offering, I'm going to kill you. Yeah, it's kind of that thing. Yeah. So what's going on? God is making a covenant and with Abram. And he's cutting a covenant. Covenant means to cut.
That's right.
Yeah. So this is sort of extra biblical. And by extra biblical, I don't mean untrue. Just the Bible doesn't really explain a lot about the covenant making process here, right? Although we're going to see another covenant pretty soon where something gets cut.
Yeah.
But right now, it seems that God is making covenant, and they're going through the process of making an agreement.
Yeah.
And that's what these cut animals about. We have some extra biblical sources where people would make treaties and they would sacrifice an animal like this.
Yeah.
And the implication is that if either of us breaks our word, then we'll be killed or slaughtered like these animals.
Yeah.
So the animals are symbolic of the covenant.
Yeah.
So
it's not just extra biblical though. It's biblical too. Was it
Jeremiah or somebody?
Jeremiah 34. Yeah, Jeremiah 34. I'll read it here.
It's still a little vague, but
it says this: "As for those who disobeyed my covenant, not keeping the terms of the covenant they made before me, I will treat them like the calf they cut in two in order to pass between its pieces. The officials of Judah and Jerusalem, the court officials, the priests, and all the people of the land who passed between the pieces of the calf. All these I will hand over to their enemies, to those who intend to take their life. Their corpses will become food for the birds of the sky and for the wild animals of the land." So, I mean, that's pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. You go to Jeremiah.
Yeah.
But at this time, it's not explained.
It's not explained here.
No.
But we got some.
But like I said, we do.
Because you think about like what you don't have a ton from the ancient world as far as writings and stuff.
No, it's ancient.
What you do actually have are a bunch of treaties.
Yes.
Because they wrote them down and they put them in stone.
Because they were scared.
Yeah, they're scared. Yeah, it's important to remember these details. Yeah. And so that out of the things that they get from the ancient world, they have a pretty good amount of these treaties.
They do, and always something is killed. Yeah, it's like I went down. I just read. Oh, this is so weird. Yeah. I read about. I can't remember. It's like Sumeria or something. A king went and made a thing. He said, "We killed a wild ass together."
Yeah.
After their covenant. And
this is a PG-13 podcast.
That means donkey, bud.
I know.
But yeah, they did that. So it's like part of the covenant. So what's happening here? He's preparing to make a covenant with God.
Yeah, this is how they made these covenants, the treaties, these agreements. They cut these animals up.
Yeah, so right? God is giving him he says, "How can I know?" And God says, "Well, we'll make a covenant together. We'll make an agreement."
Yeah.
And what happens next is quite beautiful.
It is.
And it is echoed again when we get to Mount Moriah with Isaac.
Yeah.
Because what happens here is after he does this, the covenant is generally a two-way street, right?
Yeah.
I promise I won't come over this boundary line, and you don't come over this boundary line with your armies, and if we do, you become like this dead covenant. Yeah. And so you shake on or something.
Yeah.
Abram has nothing to do with the covenant.
That's right.
God walks between the pieces.
Yep.
Himself.
Yeah.
He doesn't say, "Abraham, walk with me."
He puts Abraham to sleep.
He puts him to sleep.
It's like, "You're not going to do this.
You're not going to do this."
Abraham goes in deep sleep. And you say God walks through. It says in 17, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch appeared and passed between the divided ends.
Yeah, and a terror fell.
Yeah.
So this is important in a minute. It's going to be important. Let's get back to that. But but it is I don't know, theophany, what would we say? It's a manifestation of God in a way we can understand, right? And so he passes between these pieces. And what God is declaring to Abram, if I don't do this stuff, may I become like this dead cow.
Yeah, that's right.
I am taking the responsibility for fulfilling you taking this land. You're not going to do it. You take a nap, brother.
Yeah. And here's a parallel for like... this is how we know it's God in the imagery is because God is depicted like this again a couple times. One of them is when Israel, the nation Israel, makes a covenant with God at Mount Sinai.
400 years later, in fact.
Yep, which is predicted
This is a hypertext. This is a hypertext link. When Israel stands before the mountain of God, a terror falls on them. Just like with Abram. And a thick smoke and darkness, and there's lightning and fire. Read it.
Yeah, Mount Sinai was completely enveloped in smoke because the Lord Yahweh came down on it in fire.
Yeah.
Its smoke went up like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain shook violently. As the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him in the thunder. Yeah, so this is like how God presents himself. And also, when they're wandering, what he's...
smoke by day and pillar of fire by night.
Yeah. So this is just like how God has chosen to represent himself in physical things on earth, right? For people to understand who he is and what he's doing.
Yeah.
So he passes between the pieces.
And
what does that mean, though? That God passes between the pieces?
He's binding himself. We said, he's binding himself. We'll see this again with Isaac when Abram's going to sacrifice Isaac. He says, "I swear by myself, that I will bless you and your posterity or your seed after you." And so, God swore by himself, for there was nothing greater that he could swear by. And so what's happening here is he's saying, I'm going to do it. How can you know it's going to happen? It's not going to depend on you. That's how you can know. You can't fail. This is a no fail.
Let me be cursed. Let me be cut up like this. If you know, and so it's he's putting all of the responsibility on himself. God's taking responsibility for all of it.
But God can never be killed, could he?
I know, right? Do you see why this is like such a precursor, a hyperlink for what happens to Christ?
Yes, it's all over.
Jesus is all over this.
People wonder, I guess sometimes they think, man, the Apostle Paul went into synagogues with just the Old Testament and convinced people to be Christians. Lots of them. Even priests became obedient to the faith, we learn in Acts. It's like, how did they do it? He was like, come with me to Genesis 15. Let's talk about it, brother.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's not just God taking responsibility for what he's supposed to do. Of course he's going to do that. That's part of the covenant. But by putting Abraham in sleep and him alone walking through the pieces, it's him taking responsibility for Abram also. And for all of his offspring and all of the things that they will do, which are mostly evil.
He keeps putting up with them.
And so you get to Romans...
Because he can't do otherwise. He is bound by his own treaty.
By his own word. You get to Romans 3. We were talking about Romans 3 earlier, and this is what is said right after that passage we read. God presented Jesus, right, as this atoning sacrifice to demonstrate his righteousness at the present time, so that he would be just and justify the one who has faith in Jesus. Because in his restraint, God passed over the sins previously committed. And so that's part of what's going on here, is that this is a time of him passing over these sins. Right?
And for clarity, passing over doesn't mean ignore.
No.
It means I'm going to take care of this. Right, it's not time yet for me to take care of it. I'm going to take care of it. So that means if you say, and people ask this, how did Jews or how did people in the Old Testament get saved? And the answer is through Jesus.
That's right.
100%. He is the only one who can save. So all these sins piled up, so to speak, from before and after, and they're all heaped on Christ because God made a covenant with a man named Abraham, because he said, I believe you can do it. Whoa. That's big.
That's incredible.
Wow.
That's
crazy.
It's so beautiful, man.
I know. It is a beautiful story.
Yes, it is.
It's the greatest story ever told.
It's the story, you know? So that's Genesis 15. I think we can keep on going a little bit.
We can talk about how...
I want to talk about the Amorites a little bit.
Well, talk about the fact that for 400 years, like the omniscience of God knowing stuff, is like, look, you're going to go in... And he's telling them this. Think about this. Okay, who's reading this? It's not Abram.
That's right.
The people who are reading it are the folks who've been sitting in slavery for 400 years,
right?
And they might think, well, what happened? Right? What happened?
We'll explain that a little bit. So, it's most commonly believed that Moses is the one who wrote down the stories of Genesis. And because Moses doesn't show up till Exodus. So the book of Genesis, it's most commonly attested to Moses, and it's written down while, some point during the wanderings and stuff. So the first people to receive the stories in their written form were the wandering Israelites.
And they call it the Book of Moses.
They do.
It's the Torah, the Book of Moses.
And so the front-loaded audience for Genesis is Israel, early Israel coming out of Egypt.
I just told somebody this yesterday. It's so wild. A lot of people, when they picture Moses, they got Charlton Heston with a staff. And, his robe or whatever, and he's like, let my people go. I actually think of Moses wandering around the desert carrying armloads of scrolls and dropping them and picking them up, because when Moses was raised in Egypt, was an educated man. I think that he had stories of his people, archives from the days of Joseph when he was there.
Yeah.
And he is trying to piece together the story of his people for his people. And I think he had a lot of sources for it.
Yeah.
And so he's under the inspiration of God. We know Luke did the same thing, right?
Yeah,
Next
that's
he says,
right.
I've searched these things out and talked to eyewitnesses, most excellent Theophilus.
Yeah.
I think Moses is like a scholar, dude.
Yeah.
And I don't just see him walking around with a stick saying, let my people go, but like with a quill.
Yeah.
And a piece of parchment, like writing down the story of his people.
I think that's fair.
And
especially, I mean, you think like how big, how much work would it take to, it's wild. Like we lose track of how big the Torah is.
It's so big.
Because like we write it on rice paper in a little
Yes.
Bible. But if you're writing on a parchment scroll, oh my goodness.
I don't know if any of you ever been, I mean, maybe not everybody listening to this is a Christian or what, but if you've ever been to a Jewish synagogue, which I have, and you've seen a Torah scroll, a handwritten Torah scroll, which are very valuable.
Yeah.
They'll carry it around sometimes and say Torah, 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 right?
Yeah,
the thing is like 4 feet tall.
Yeah.
And it's like massive.
It's massive.
It's massive. And all it is the Pentateuch.
Yeah.
It's only the Torah. It's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. If you wallpapered this office with a handwritten piece of Torah, it would cover this entire wall.
And it would be tiny writing.
Tiny.
Tiny. Like probably almost unreadable.
Yes.
Yeah.
The technology of books is second only to the internet.
It really, that's true. It's wild, though.
It rained.
It changed the world.
Changed the world.
So, Moses as
look
the guy
how thin
with
that little paper is.
I know it.
That is a marvel.
Yeah.
If I handed this to Moses, he'd be like, what is this glory?
It's a paper invented for the Bible.
Yes.
Because the Bible's so big.
Yes.
That's so wild.
The printing press was for the Bible. What they running off the Gutenberg press
That's
first
right.
thing is like
Gutenberg
hot
Bible.
off the get you a Bible, buddy.
Yeah.
But so I think Moses is writing this stuff down. It's passed on. It gets forgotten sometimes and abandoned. Time of Josiah, they find a Torah scroll. They don't even know what it is.
Oh, I know. That's wild.
So where do we get the one we got today? Oh, probably around the time of Ezra.
Yeah.
It's because whatever language, we just know linguistically that they were speaking when they were in the Exodus is not the Hebrew of the Masoretic text.
That's right. There's like different layers of when we talk about Hebrew and like what we have today. We have like a was it like 400 or 500 years BC version of it, and there's a couple different layers underneath that where the spoken language might have been similar, but the writing changed. They swapped out
the letters.
Yeah. Like they used to have a more cursive kind of script, and they swapped out for this block script.
They call it Proto-Hebrew
and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was different.
And even in like Daniel, sometimes it just out of nowhere swaps from Hebrew to Aramaic. And that's how you can know if somebody knows Hebrew but not Aramaic. Like, what just happened? Because same alphabet.
Yeah,
same different language.
Different language.
Like swapping from French to Portuguese all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Same alphabet.
So we're not saying the Bible's not inspired, just to be sure. We're saying that God, there's a history of the text.
Yeah. And at some point in there, you get all these little, we talked about this the very first week, you get these little additions, the city, what was it, Luz.
Today we call it Bethel or something like that. There's these little, one of my professors used to say there's these little seams. You can see where they sort of stitch the thing together.
Yeah.
And it probably around Nehemiah, Ezra.
Well, that was a fun little rabbit trail. I don't know how we did that. But so let's talk about verse 16 is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
In the fourth generation, they'll return here.
Yeah, generation must have been 100 years back in the day.
Yeah, I guess.
Everybody lived a long time. There's no, that's another weird thing. There's no agreed on time for how long a generation is.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
I know.
It could be 20 years, 25 years, 30. Like, what is it?
How long do people live, I guess?
When do they start having babies? That's the question. So, like,
these days, like generations are like kind of described by cultural distinctives. You know, it's like the millennials. What separates millennials from Gen X? It's actually like technology. That's what they end up landing on. You know, and stuff.
And attitude. We're jerks, and millennials are kind of nice.
Entitled. Yeah.
Oh, are you? Okay. I don't know.
That's what they say.
I don't get into that stuff too much.
The negative aspect of it I find to be like overblown and like it's actually not. I don't find it to be
I'll
true.
say one weird thing about it. If you
Yeah.
reckon a generation is 25 years, that means 4 generations back is 100 years, right?
Yeah.
So every 100 years you have 4 generations. You stack 40 of your direct ancestors in a room, and that's 1,000 years of experience. Only 40. You
Yeah.
could fit them in a small
I
room.
know it.
That
How
is
many
wild.
generations is it between me? How many like ancestor levels is between me and like Noah? I wonder what the answer to that
It's
is.
probably like 120. It's
Yeah.
not many.
It's not,
Dude, it's not much. There's
know,
only like
that's wild.
80 people. We got that many in church on Sunday. 80. More. We got more people in church on Sunday than it would take to get back to the day of Jesus.
Yeah.
Like just a telephone tag.
Are you serious?
Yes. 100 years is 4 people.
Yeah.
So that means 1,000 years is 40. 2,000 years is 80. 80
my
people.
goodness.
That's it. There are only 80 people from you to Jesus.
And if there's
At 25-year generations.
160 to here, probably this is about 2000 BC.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That's it. You could fill them up in a small room.
Yeah.
That's how
nuts,
stupid we
people.
are. That's
Yeah.
how stupid we are. That's how fast we forget junk. You're
Yeah.
like, we don't forget stuff that fast. Name your great-great-grandfathers.
Oh my goodness.
Forget about it.
Yeah.
Forget about it. Name any of
You ever
them.
done Ancestry.com stuff?
Yes.
Like that is bizarre.
Bizarre.
Like you click, you click through there and you find basically everyone's related to a king or something.
Oh,
in Europe.
absolutely.
Yeah.
When people's like, I'm related. Dude, my mom is 1% Native American, 1% Bantu from Cameroon, Africa. Not a joke. Look
That's
at me.
crazy.
Look at me. I look like the whitest dude that ever bounced out of Norway or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I am also 21% Scottish, 21% Irish. I have a lot of internal conflict.
Yeah.
And British. It's
Yeah.
like all my people are fighting and loving each other. I don't know what was
who
happening.
knows?
Who
Yeah.
knows?
That's bizarre. 80 generations.
That's it.
wow.
I know. I don't know what that has to do with the Bible.
Time is weird. I don't know.
Time's
either,
weird.
But
it's just like we feel like these events are like ancient, so far removed. Dude, you could fit the generations in this room.
That's right. The truth is that our memories are so fragile.
Fragile.
Yeah.
You think, man, Ezra. If Ezra wrote down, if he had a copy of the book of Moses in whatever Proto-Hebrew he's in,
Yeah.
and under the inspiration of God, he puts together the Torah and writes his story,
Yeah.
and probably Nehemiah's. We're talking like 100 generations ago.
Yeah.
100 people.
That's wild.
That's nuts.
I saw something the other day. Do you know who Shane Pruitt is?
No.
He's like
Sorry, Shane, but it's not your fault.
He's a good dude. He's kind of like a student evangelist, like a really good guy.
Oh,
like,
okay.
He does a lot of kind of cultural analysis on like Generation Z and and stuff. And really great guy and good preacher. And he made this post on X, Twitter, or whatever, and it was like it was kind of describing how generational drift works with the gospel. And so it's like one generation. Your grandparents don't prioritize church often, right? And so their kids become Christmas, Easter Christians. Their kids become nuns, which is, religious nuns.
Yeah.
Their kids become atheists. And so, like, that's how within 4 generations, you have like this kind of like pattern of religious neglect. And like, I think, just thinking about those, that how few generations there are back to Jesus, that stuff kind of makes sense. Like how fragile it is.
It's just amazing how quick you forget. Francis Schaeffer made this analogy one time, and I've never forgotten. He was talking sort of like boundaries and morals in society. And the example is, we can park at Walmart now because we have lines tells us where to park.
Yeah.
And then you get like this person that's like, truth's not objective, and they come in and they erase all the parking lot lines. They're all gone. Park wherever you want.
Yeah.
Well, the next generation or we can still kind of remember how to park in an organized manner. By the second generation, people are piled up at the door and nobody can drive because nobody remembers where the boundaries were or what even a parking lot should look like.
Yeah.
And it happens that fast.
Yeah.
And so what is the point? Okay, Moses writes this stuff down.
Yeah.
Moses.
Yeah.
So that when the people in the Exodus are reading this, they'd be like, well, God didn't forget about us for 400 years. He told Abram this was going to happen.
Yeah.
This is, we're on plan.
Yeah.
We're the generation promised.
Yep.
And we know that they were keeping up with these stories. We know that.
Yeah.
Because of Joseph.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they remembered to get his bones. That's one of the most actually poignant, beautiful things to me in the whole Bible.
I know, that's a beautiful moment.
Joseph's like dying, and he says, when y'all leave, when you go, like God promised, take my bones.
Take
and 400 years later, it's like the list of stuff they carried, and they brought Joseph's bones. And I'm like, golly.
They remembered. So in the fourth generation, they'll return back to the land and here's the reason, like that God gives for their return.
Yeah.
Because the iniquity of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. It's not going to happen now. The iniquity of the Amorites hasn't reached its full measure yet.
Yes.
And when they return, it will.
Yes.
Who are the Amorites?
They're a people who live in Canaan.
Yep.
And God is extending tremendous mercy towards them and call to repentance. We know that they have a general sense of who God is.
Yeah.
Because who is the king of the Amorites that,
they run into him when they're coming back into the promised land.
Yeah.
And he betrays them.
He does betray them.
Yeah. It's not Og. Is it Bashan? I don't know.
It's one of these. We'll figure it out here in a little bit.
We'll read it.
We'll get there.
Chapters,
but so they just keep sinning, and God keeps extending to them grace. But there is a measure.
Yeah.
There's a time where God's like, that's enough, and judgment falls.
Yeah.
And people read about the genociding of the Israelites coming into the land of Canaan.
Yeah.
But there are hints at the level of depravity there.
Yeah.
Throughout. These aren't just folks that are just sitting around minding their own business.
I mean, these are like kind of blatant, horrible things. Yeah.
Burning children to death in fires.
Yep.
Babies.
The Dagon statues.
We know this is a thing.
Horrible.
We have found them.
Yeah.
They had these big brass statues that they lit fires under. It would have its hands out, and they would lay infants in these hot hands and sacrifice them to Dagon. It's awful.
Yeah.
It's just horrific kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Sort of like when the Spaniards come over and they find what's going on. Is it the Aztecs?
The Aztecs were awful.
Awful.
Yeah.
And we went to Cozumel, and they built these pyramids. And we're like, what were these pyramids for? It's like, was it for observation of the stars? Were they trying to get close to heaven? It's like, no, we just tossed human sacrifice off the top. That's what's the point. It's like, yikes.
Yeah.
You bad stuff. And God put up with that 400 years. And like, I'm getting rid of these folk.
Yeah. So immense mercy, but there's a measure and it's over. And so it's like multiple purposes of God going on here. Like he's bringing his people into the promised land to bless them. But they're also his right hand of justice.
Yeah.
Against the Amorites, against the Kenites, Kenizzites, Kadmonites, Hethites, Perizzites, all of them, Amorites, Canaanites,
Jebusites.
And the Amorites,
I like the Girgashites.
Yeah.
I feel like what you ought to get after a gigabyte. You get a Girgashite. The gigabytes.
The Amorites are also the descendants of Canaan. That's in the Table of Nations chapter.
Cursed be Canaan.
They're like the direct line to Canaan and Ham.
Yeah, they're kin.
They are. And so it's setting up like these people. And it also I think the name means West people or something about that. People in the West, which is another one of those location hyperlinks.
Yeah, we still got Canaanites too. Verse 21.
Yep.
Descendants of Canaan.
Yep.
And God, it's interesting because like the Edomites and other folks who are related to Jacob later, like Esau's kids or the Edomites and stuff, God gives them, every single one of those descendants, he kind of gives them a chance to do right by Israel. Mm-hmm. And those who curse them will be cursed.
Yeah.
And those who bless them will be blessed. And they all screw up. Every single one of them are like, nope, we're going to try to kill you. And God's like, too bad.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I think we're pretty good on time. Let's we're gonna draw it to a close here, and we'll give a whole week on circumcision next week and the story with Isaac.
Yeah,
all about Isaac.
Oh, we're not going to talk about Sarah's bright idea too?
We'll do that next week too, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
We've run out of time. We've used the entire hour on Genesis 15 as it deserves.
Yeah, and also my dumb ramblings on generations.
It was fun though. It's interesting stuff. Yeah,
we still do.
I think it's still it's like it wasn't super related, but it's a worthwhile thing that it matters what you do with your kids and stuff.
It does.
Like just how that generational drift.
Yeah, and it's going to change. And it's changing more rapidly than it ever changed in the history of the world.
Yeah.
Like, apparently it used to take 100 years for generational change.
Yeah.
But, like, with the advancement of technology, there is stuff happening now that if you'd have told me, I'm a Gen Xer, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I was 15, 16, that I could have a computer in my pocket that could access an invisible net that would give me all wisdom and knowledge, I would have been like, what?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I know it.
You know what I did? This is so dumb.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't believe this. But we got AI now.
Yeah.
I got this chat GPT, and I make it tell me stories. Did I tell you this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like type in, like on my bathroom time, I'm like, there's a guy who was orphaned and he was raised by farmers and he was fishing one day and got attacked by a bear. What happens? And it like tells me a story.
Yeah. I know it.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
And sometimes they're pretty good.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're dumb.
Yeah.
But sometimes pretty good.
Yeah, things are changing fast, man.
I can't. Well, we're not going to be able to tell what's real and what's not from now
I know
on.
it. And, yeah, that's true.
It's already happening. Like I'm
This
not
is all
getting.
the
I'm
free
not.
versions, too. Yeah.
I'm not getting political.
Yeah.
But already it's like, hey, this person's rally is fake. All these people are generated by AI, and you don't know who to believe.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's real or not.
Deep fakes are going to be very difficult.
There are people doing deep fakes with it's like Joe Rogan talking to Elon Musk, and I think it's part of the actual podcast, and it's not. It's some junk people made up, and I didn't realize. I'm like,
people do that for Joe Rogan all the time. They'll make an ad.
Yeah.
Where that simulates him talking to them, and like he got invited to their podcast.
Yeah.
And he was not on the podcast.
No.
They've like ripped one of his videos and they do the back and forth and they just pick out like things that he says so they can like basically prop up whatever they want to sell.
My favorite one of all time was oh my goodness, it was Joe Biden, Obama, and Trump, and what's that guy's name? Ben
Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro was the dungeon master, and all of them were playing D&D together, and it had the names, and it was hilarious. Like Joe Biden was like, I try to stab it with my sword, caw-caw, because he was playing this bird man. It was wild. I listened to every bit of it. Obama was like, and of course Trump's playing like a barbarian, and Obama's like, chill out. And it's just amazing.
Hey, give me your best Trump impression.
I can't do it.
Yes, you can.
I don't.
Come on,
I can't do it.
Do it for all the people. They all want to see your Trump impression.
I've never tried it.
Yeah, well, now's your shot.
I can't. I'm sorry.
No,
you
got
do
to.
it. You do
all
it.
right, here we go. All right.
Dungeons and Dragons. It's a great game. I love it a lot. It's the best game I've ever seen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have the good accent, right accent,
Yeah.
but I can do the hands.
Yeah, you got the hands.
You
It's
do
the
the
best.
hands. It's the best.
We're going to kill all these kobolds. We're going to kill them so much.
Anyway, I don't know where we're at now. Sorry, team. Sorry, guys.
That's so funny.
We love Jesus.
All right. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please follow it, give it a review, comment on it. That's always fun to interact with. If you're on YouTube, like, subscribe. You can also comment on YouTube. We also interact with those. Thank you so much for listening to the Big Deal Podcast.